Extra pair of glasses.
It's okay. Karen's all the way back.
Karen. Oh, there you are, Karen.
If you need me, I'll stand up so you can see me, okay?
I think we'll have a few more people. Rachel said 16 people signed up online
Nice.
a couple days ago.
We're ready whenever you.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of a creature of the clock. Is my clock correct? Is it
It is 9:59.
9:59? Okay, when you see it turn to 10,
You're my kind of person.
okay? I mean, if we're gonna have these fancy digital devices, they might as well all be fine-tuned
Yeah.
at the same minute. Hi, Lynn.
Good morning, how are you?
Good.
Thank you.
Well,
Did you make that sweater?
my daughter did.
Oh, it's
Isn't it amazing?
fun. It's a lot of fun.
My mother-in-law made my hat, and my daughter made my sweater. Yeah.
Yes.
It's 10.
It's 10. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much. I think there's a bit of a echo. Is it because I'm standing near the staircase? You stand over here.
Order in the room.
Ta-da!
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay, here we are. We're going to get started. Thanks, everybody, for coming out on a cold, cold, cold Saturday morning. I gather it's going to thaw next week. Who knows what we'll find underneath all the snow. My name is Meg Mott. I'm your town moderator, and this here is 4/5 of our select board. So maybe we could start with you, Eric, and if you wouldn't mind just saying your name and what, how many years you've been on the select board and what term you're holding, 2-year, 3-year, etc.
My name is Eric McGowan. This is a 3-year term. This is my 3rd year. And I'm running again for another 3 years.
Great, thank you.
I'm Peg Altman. I think I've been on the select board for 3 years now, 4, maybe 4. And in whatever term I'm in right now, I have 1 more year in that term.
I'm Eileen Tellick. It says Eileen Shute, but I just recently legally changed my name. And I am in my 1st year of my 2nd, 3rd year term.
Great, 1st year, 2nd, 3rd, 3-year term. And you're the chair.
I am the chair.
Great, thank you.
I'm Fletcher Proctor. I have a 2-year seat and I'm finishing the 1st year now. This is my 1st year on board.
Great. And the person who's not here this morning, Nate Snell, is finishing up his term on the select board. And so there is going to be an election for his seat. Got that right?
Yep.
And that is what we were able to pull together a candidate forum. I know it's not the perfect time. Daniel Hartigan, I gratefully asked him if he would step in, and he said yes. So to organize it, it's happening Thursday at 6 p.m. I just found out that's also when the school district elections are happening at the same time. But we are going to go forward with this so that you'll be able to find the 2 candidates who are running for Nate's seat, one of whom is Logan Sears and the other is Beck Slattery. So we do have a contested select board seat this year.
Are you coming to that too?
I might if I can make it.
Okay. I just wondered, because that's another seat.
He's running here.
He's running
Yeah.
too.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Eric, that would be great if you're able to do that. And I hope that schedule fits you. This all came together rather quickly. We were hoping somebody else was going to organize a candidate forum. They were not able to do it, so yeah, we're moving quickly. But we got something pulled off. Good news. So today is a informational meeting for town meeting. Come on in and have a seat. We do have copies of the articles here. Maybe Karen, would you be willing for people to come in?
Hey, Logan.
Oh, great. Here's one of our candidates.
And
Excellent.
Bex just arrived as well.
Oh, good. Okay, we have our 2 candidates, Bex and Logan. The candidate forum is happening Thursday, 6 p.m., and will happen here. So thank you very much for running and for being contestants.
Thank you.
That's what we want, more discussion. So today is an opportunity. We only have 2 hours, so I'm going to move things along, but it's your time. So I don't want to be obnoxious to you all. I may be obnoxious to the select board. I hope you will forgive me in advance, because if I see people here who have questions, I'm going to ask you all to give your answers in a succinct way so that we can get back to the public. Because this is your time to get the information you need in order to have a more robust deliberation during town meeting, March 4th together, having different opinions. So we're not going to go through all of the articles, because the first are rather perfunctory about hearing reports and electing. However, the first, if you look, everybody have either in their town report or through a past handout. The first one that we will consider is Article 4. Shall the voters of the town of Putney authorize general fund expenditures for expenses of $1,896,670.75, of which $1,414,148.75 shall be raised by taxes, and $482,522 by non-tax revenues for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026. Peg, is there anything you want to say about this article before we find out any questions from our voters?
I do not have anything
Okay.
to say right now.
That's fine. The town report, which you should have found in your mailboxes, should give you some information, and we also have a financial supplement, which I feel free to come up and get if you want to see that. It has some charts. Does anybody have any questions?
Actually, can I ask one question? I'm just curious, Karen, where will this be available for people?
So that right now is on the website. It is under the town clerk's page. And in the news brief for today, there's a link to the town report and that financial supplement.
This is super, I haven't had a chance to completely digest it, but what I've seen of it, it breaks things down in a very visual way, and is another way to attack that, all that data in the budget. So I encourage people to look at that.
Right.
Yeah. This is fantastic. It has charts, it has colors, it explains things in simple English. So if you need one, I'll bring it over to you, or Karen will.
Yeah. So I just want to say too, as a town manager and the finance director, so the tax rate for the municipal taxes for fiscal year 2026 actually went down by 1 cent on the tax rate. So right now we are at 0.7088, and your new tax rate, which is in your town report, is going to be 0.6916. So in order to do that, I trimmed quite a bit. And we also ended up taking approximately $119,000 of fund balance surplus, and we offset what needed to be raised. So I needed to just let the public know that the municipal tax rate is not going to go up.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Yeah. So I'm rolling the dice, folks. And the burden is going to be felt on the employees, especially in town hall. I did not put in the budget an administrative assistant position. And to hire an employee for the town of Putney with benefits, it's approximately $100,000. That's a big number. And so I listened, I heard the community about the tax rate, and it is level funded. Actually down by 1 cent.
This means that you're doing more work so that we can pay less taxes, is that right?
And I want
So
to make
you
sure
don't
this
pay
is getting
more.
picked up by the microphones. Can you hear Karen? Yeah. And so the question is, because of all this hard work, Karen, you're gonna be doing more work for the community? That's the question. Is that true?
I have a good team right now at Town Hall with John Johnson, Rachel Ryan, and Kim Monroe has been basically my left arm, especially when it comes to the treasurer position. And our audit results too, we had a clean audit. There were no marks against us. So I have a solid team right now. And although we are doing a lot of work, I do rely on the community, and I'm working with other folks, like the Planning Commission. And there's a lot of good things happening in Putney, and in the next year, we will see some results of those projects that we've been trying to move forward. And yeah, I'm always conscientious of the finances and try to be conservative. Just because the money is in the budget doesn't necessarily mean we have to spend everything.
Does anybody have any questions? Thank you, Karen, about Article 4.
Karen, you mentioned good things happening in Putney over the next year. Can you elaborate on that?
So we just completed a housing needs assessment study. The Planning Commission was the catalyst for that. And Town Hall renovation project. We are working with an architect, and we're in the schematic design phase right now. And what will happen with that is, once we have a dollar amount for renovation, we will come to the select board and the community, because it's a big project. You know, we're working with fire and rescue, and what other projects do we, zoning bylaw modernization, that is key. That is going to start like within the next month. Planning Commission is spearheading that project as well. Most of these projects already have grant funding, and it allows us to make these changes and look at things. So there's a lot going on in Putney, and it's positive. And I'm going to embrace it, because I think it's progressive, and like I said, we still need to be safe and conservative, and that's what I watch for.
And for people who have this, it does list some of the projects in here that capital expenditures and those sort of things.
It also gives a report of each office and what we worked on and accomplished in 2024, what we're working on this year in 25, and what we're proposing to work on in 26. The other thing too, financially, is we'll be looking at fund balances and a capital plan that will actually level out what needs to be spent. Because right now it's kind of like this. So there's a lot happening behind the scenes, but I can honestly say I have a lot of people that support me in Town Hall and in other departments and in the community, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions about Article 4? We can always go back. Oh, yes, go ahead. And can you just remind, if you can say your name, I'm trying to
Dawn
remember.
King.
What?
Dawn King.
Dawn King.
This is very ignorant, but what is the general fund? Is that all the money we spend completely in our town in a year?
Who would like to answer that question? It's a great
You want me
question.
to answer it? Okay. It's your article. So I'm gonna have, Karen's gonna back me up if I say something wrong, but in general, yes, the general fund is town hall expenditures, the library is included in that, fire department. Highway department is a separate fund subject, okay. Budget, thank you. So yeah, most of the operating budget is the general fund.
Which then leads us to Article 5. We can always go back.
Yeah, and I also want to say
yeah.
if there's questions that we can't answer, we're going to write them down and we'll have an answer by town meeting. But we don't have all the answers today.
And I
necessarily.
also just wanted to say, there are no dumb questions.
Well, let's move ahead to Article 5, and then we'll see that there's two different funds that we draw on. Article 5 says, shall the voters of the town of Putney authorize highway fund expenditures of $1,338,921, of which $1,170,221 shall be raised by taxes and $168,700 by non-tax revenues for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026. Eric, do you want to say anything about this article?
I don't, is that level funded, Karen? I mean, is that?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's
Yes.
no,
There's no
Stay the same.
increase on the highway. We level funded that. We actually had a little bit of money, and I actually put it back in the highway budget. So our main projects for highway for '26 is we have to do blasting at the gravel pit that we jointly own with Dummerston. And that's gonna be big. And so we're starting to work with Dummerston Selectboard and having conversations and getting logistics put together for that. We're also gonna be buying a new dump truck. We have not purchased a piece of equipment in the last 2 years. And actually, that money has been going into the Highway Capital Reserve Fund. Unfortunately, with the price of everything else, trucks have gone up.
Is that
And
Article 6? Just
It is
to-
Article 6.
it is.
Yes, okay, so,
I won't get there yet.
okay,
But,
preview for Article 6.
yeah, but we have level funded the highway department, and again, no tax increase for that budget.
Any questions on Article 6 on the highway fund? Yes, in the back. Can you say your name?
Brian Molesco.
Hi, Brian, thank you.
What is the revenue that's coming in for the non-tax revenues? What is that
So for highway or for both general fund and highway?
for both?
All right, so mostly for highway, it is grant funding from the state of Vermont that helps us take care of our roads. We anticipate about $140,000 just from the state to go into highway revenue. And then the general fund, most of that, I will tell you, is fund balance surplus. So it was about $119,000. So it's very difficult and challenging to create new revenue sources to offset taxes. We're finding out we have to be creative.
We'll get to those too.
But when you look at the article, you can see how much that needs to be raised versus the that's pretty much taken in from other agencies or grants. And it's a big difference. And we're trying to balance that out a little bit, but it's been a challenge.
Karen, isn't part of that utilities, that we pay as a town that are not tax related, but other expenses that we pay? Does that show up in there?
In the highway fund or the
No,
general?
no, in the general
In the
fund.
general fund.
What do you mean utilities?
Like water, sewer,
No, water and sewer
those are
is,
separate budgets.
they're separate budgets.
Okay,
Water and sewer is a user fee base, and which means that who's ever on water and sewer, they put into those budgets, or they pay the operating expenses in those two budgets.
Any other questions on the highway fund? Yes. Dawn?
As a general, financial question, is Putney gonna be affected at all by what's going on in the federal government cutting?
That question was asked Wednesday night at our select board meeting.
Yeah.
And my response was that I'm optimistic, only because executive orders have been signed and then retracted. Right now, there is no fear of losing any money, and we have several projects that are FEMA-based grants. One's a box culvert up on Parkman Wood Road, and then we have 2 generators coming, one for the wastewater treatment plant and another one for Sand Hill Well House, that they're $140,000. But we have grant money for those, and Parkman Wood is secured. That's a $186,000 project. So I'm mindful of the potential, but as long as they're out there, we're gonna go after the grants.
Yeah, Lynn?
What were those 2 projects again, with locations that you just mentioned?
Parkman Wood Road, it's actually in the financial supplement, Lynn,
Okay, thank
under
you.
highway.
All right.
And then the 2 generators, one's for the wastewater treatment plant, and then the other one's for Sand Hill Well House.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the highway fund?
I just wanted to respond also to what you were saying, Dawn, because part of the answer is we don't know.
Right.
We don't really know what's happening at the federal level is going to impact us here in town yet. We depend on some federal funding for different projects we have, and Karen's optimistic, but we don't really know. We'll have to see what happens.
Anything else on the highway fund? Otherwise, we're gonna go to that dump truck. Article 6, shall the voters of the town of Putney authorize the select board to purchase a new highway truck with accessories at a cost not to exceed $200,000 to be paid from the Highway Capital Reserve Fund? Eric, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I don't, I think Karen started down that road a lot to finish.
Yeah,
And just
stole his thunder.
I know, right? So just so that folks know, Lenny Howard is the road superintendent here in Putney. He's been road superintendent since May 2024. He will be at town meeting. I have requested his presence. And I do expect that he'll talk about the highway department and about this specific article. Right now, we do have a quote for a cab chassis, and then we have a second quote for a dump body. We're still shopping around. We can do a trade. Lenny actually just told me this week that he had the auctioneer out to the highway department to look at the truck. We may be able to get a better price at auction. We've never done that here in Putney. New guy, let's try something new, right? So we're gonna try that. But prices are up, and it's about $221,000 right now for the price of this truck we're looking at.
Brian?
Yes, what is the oldest truck that Putney has, the one you're talking about auction? And do you know what kind of mileage is on that vehicle?
So it's a 2018 Western Star. I don't know how many miles are on it. We keep our trucks for 10 years. In the past, we would borrow on a 5-year term. We have not had to borrow for the last 4 years. So now we buy through our capital reserve fund, but I'm looking to get the best price on this truck, but we'll see what happens.
Seeing that it's not 10 years old at this point, would it make sense to possibly hold off, seeing that this new administration that has come in has put tariffs on everything, which is going to make it more expensive, which maybe in a couple of years that the tariffs would maybe back off and be more financially responsible to buy it then?
So the dealers are trying to tease out different things, and there's a chance that we will have somebody come to the board.
To do
What does that mean?
Because, well, it's hard to explain, because it's like, they're not able to get inventory.
The
So-
dealers.
Yeah, the dealers cannot get inventory right now. So they have enough right now to maybe last a year. So after that, it's, who knows? We don't know.
Well, that's understandable.
Yeah, and it's gonna be difficult. So the dealers are trying to get their heads around it. As people know too, that the state of Vermont is pushing municipalities to go to electric. The last conversation I had with a dealer is, for an electric dump truck is about $600,000. So. And we have 5 dump trucks, folks.
Do we have any other questions about the dump truck? Yes.
Well, I was just
Steve.
wondering, wouldn't it be proactive to get it now? I mean, if
Yes.
25% tariffs are gonna go into place in the next
Right.
couple of years, it
Yes.
seems to me,
Yep,
this is the time to get it.
yep.
You know.
The other
otherwise
thing
it's
too,
300,000.
yeah, the other thing too, Steve, is like the truck body, so they all work together. And they all make, they try to get the best deal that they can. And there's some competitive clause too, that they can't compete with, surrounding dealers. So that's another challenge that municipalities have. So you're right, Steve, it is, we can buy it, and then if the body's not ready or it's gonna take a little longer, the dealer will hold the truck on their lot with insurance still on it until we're ready to bring it here. But, in 2 years, it could be a whole different landscape. I don't know what it's gonna look like.
Any other questions? Again, we're not able to actually deliberate, but it's so helpful to find out what the different arguments could be when we do deliberate during town meeting. But this is a chance for you to get more information. So is there any other questions about the dump truck? Yes,
You
Logan.
said total price is like 220.
21,000.
The article here is 200, so that difference is what you're hoping to get minimum for that truck?
Yeah, I'm hoping to get 50 for the truck, but we'll see. The other thing too with these trucks, so this truck we're trading is a standard, right? Everybody's going to automatic now, which is a little more expensive than standard. So it's preference at this point. But
So should we move on to Article 7? We can always go back. Don't mean to push you. I know that
I
there's.
think I'm good now.
Okay, Article 7.
You have the floor.
At the recommendation of the auditor, shall the voters of the town of Putney establish a select board unrestricted reserve fund to be used for unanticipated expenditures and revenue shortfalls during the course of the fiscal year as may be caused by economic downturns, natural disasters, and other unforeseen circumstances. Fletcher Proctor, do you have anything you want to add to this?
No, this article was drawn up because of the recommendation of the auditors. They wanted us to be able to carry the town for 90 days, 30% of our total budget in case of like a complete catastrophe. The money isn't there from the sources it's supposed to be there, which has a certain reality right now. And we've got to keep things running. So there is already an unrestricted reserve fund, and what the auditors want us to do is, well, wait a minute, that's establish the unrestricted. There's already a general fund. They want a reserve fund that's specifically for, catastrophe proofing us.
So it wouldn't be part of the general fund, it would be
No,
separate?
it's, although this is part of a much bigger discussion that includes Article 8 and 9 of how we manage reserve funds. And you'll see those on page 47 of your town report, that there's a bunch of reserve funds, and we aren't entirely coherent about how we manage them right now. So Karen and I are working on trying to get them all structured the same way. And a reserve fund can only be established by the town meeting. The select board can't establish a reserve fund. We can come up with policies on how to administer it, but right now there's some gaps in the reserve funds in general as to what our authorizations are. So we're working on that. But this is the catastrophe fund.
Great, thank you. Questions? Janice?
So did the auditors recommend how much money should be in there?
Percentage of the budget, percentage of what it takes to run the town, and that would be both the general fund and the highway fund.
What percentage do they recommend?
They want 30% in that ballpark. What we got from the town attorney was that most towns want a minimum of 15, but
15 days?
15%.
15%.
20 to 25 to 30 is also not uncommon. The auditors want us to be at the upper end, but, and I don't think this gets us all the way there. We're not dumping that much money into it in 1 year, but it's a good piece of change to park there, and I have some questions about how we want to manage that, but Karen and I are working on that.
Other questions? Yes.
So just following up
Billy.
on that, it seems important, and I'm not sure why this isn't in the article. There's nothing about specifically what percentage is being requested, and or even more specifically, what that amount would be, and it's a big number, so.
The next article has a number. First, we're establishing the fund,
Okay.
and then we're placing money into it.
Okay, good, but I'm glad to have that. That seemed like a smart question. Does that mean we want to move on to the next article, or does anybody have any questions about just setting up this reserve fund? Yes, and can you tell me your name? I forgot.
Oh, I'm Ken.
Ken.
Logan. Yeah. Hi. So would this reserve fund, maybe the next article talks about it would come from money that already exists in a separate place, or would it have to be raised through taxes or other means?
This is new money. This amount is new money. As I say, Karen and I are looking at all the reserve funds and trying to figure out how they should intersect. I'm not entirely convinced that we have to rely solely on this fund for the complete catastrophe funding that that auditor wants. But right now, we're looking at funding it with new money. Well,
It's not new money.
it's-
Karen, do you want to explain that?
Yeah, it's
The fund
leftover
The fund
money.
balance.
So fund balances, which appear in the general fund and the highway fund, at the end of fiscal year, which is June 30 of every year. So we go through our audit, adjustments are made, and that bottom line, hopefully it's positive, and it has been for the last 7 years. That money has been accumulating over the years, and technically that money belongs to the taxpayers. And we started looking at the financials and started implementing financial policies on how to, when to spend money. So that article basically is going to create a fund where that $438,000 plus will move into. And it's not just sitting there. And part of that money, folks, that $119,000 that I keep mentioning, actually came from that fund balance, because it was at $557,000. So we offset taxes, we're gonna create this reserve account for, emergencies. It can be for if we need to do like a study for something and we don't have that money, so we can utilize that. Now, the highway department also has a fund balance right now. They're about 30 days, so if there was an emergency and they needed to have money, so and this is for operating budgets. So basically, if let's just say, taxes weren't getting paid, that money is there to help us pay our bills. And it just kind of sits there, but putting it into a certain account, a reserve account, then it's protected, basically. And it can be used to offset taxes.
Any questions on, yes, Kristen?
I thought I heard you say that the general recommendation is around 15%.
No, that was the floor that the town attorney, not the auditor. The town attorney said at a minimum 15, but a lot of towns go to 20, 25, or 30, and our auditor wants us to be at the high end.
Yeah, 30 is aggressive, 30% is aggressive, but we're in a good place now. We weren't there 7 years ago. We had like $66,000 in fund balance. We had $557,000 this year.
Wow.
Just in the general fund. And the highway fund too is, you can save money, but in case of an emergency, you gotta have that backup. And we're in a good place right now, Putney is.
What percentage is the 438,000?
Can we wait till we get to that article?
Oh, I'm sorry,
I'm using my town moderator, like, this is my chance. So we're still talking about Article 7, but it looks like we're ready to move on to Article 8. Yes, Ken, before we
We
go.
started talking about Article 8,
Yeah.
we went back.
I'm just not clear whether the reserve fund would be new money or not.
It's not new money, it's been accumulating for
It's been
7 years.
accumulating.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are we ready to move to Article 8? All right, so Article 8 says, shall the voters of the town of Putney authorize the transfer of $408,105 from unrestricted year-end surplus to the Selectboard unrestricted reserve fund? Article 8 shall not be considered unless Article 7 is approved. So at town meeting, if Article 7 is not approved, we will,
It won't be a fund.
it will
Carry on the way we
we
are
will
right
carry
now.
on, yeah. But any questions on Article 8? Yes, Janice, thank you for your
I
patience.
apologize, because I thought we went on 8 and then we went back to 7, but what percentage is the $438,105 represent?
I believe that's the 90 days, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 30%.
30%, and then the leftover is going back to offset taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions about that money? Yes, Dawn?
This isn't quite a question, I was just wondering if there was a way to combine these, because it's hard to ask people to set up a fund if they don't know what that's gonna mean, and what that's gonna mean is in the second, in Article 8. So
We have a parliamentary problem, perhaps.
Well, I had the same reaction, and Karen and I are working on the language. I mean, as I said, only the town meeting can establish the fund. Then the rules of administering it would be a policy adopted by the select board. So my goal is to have that policy available at town meeting, but Karen and I are still working out the language on it.
And we can't change these articles now that they have been warned. So we're going to go with the sequence that we have, and it's going to take explaining to the voters. First, you all need to decide whether you even want such an account or such a fund. And if you do, then we can move to the question of how much to put in. Any other questions about the amount on the article? Yes, Brian?
Not so much the amount, but when was the last catastrophe in Putney? What was it?
2021, we lost $1 million of roads,
How much?
$1 million. And then the following year, we had more storm damage. So it happens. It's mostly you're gonna see it like for highways and roads.
Can I answer that question too?
Sure.
This money could also theoretically be used to pay for payroll and other things in the event that you all don't pass the budget, which was a real possibility last year. There was an amendment to postpone the approval of our general fund budget for after school, the school meeting. And if that had happened, we would have needed to use this money to pay for payroll to get to that point. So it's not as as unrealistic as it may seem sitting here today.
And we have a question in the back. Can you just tell, I don't know your name.
Yeah, Bruce Whitney. It's not a question, it's data, which I just was reading this week. 95.5% of counties in the United States have had major disaster declarations for extreme weather since between 2011 and 2024. Washington County, Vermont has the highest number of disaster declarations in the nation at 22. Lamoille is not too far behind at 17. I do not know what Windham County is, but it's a matter of time. So I'm glad this fund is being set up.
Great, thank you, Bruce. Steve?
Yeah, so this is applicable to both the town and the highway?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions about the amount being proposed to put in the reserve fund? Janice?
So I expect that people would be able to amend that amount at town meeting if they wanted to go to the 15, 25.
I love it that was brought up. Yes, you people have the right to amend. People have the right to amend an amendment, and at that point we have to stop. And then we have to bring it back. But yes, that is your right, please. Absolutely, thank you. Any other questions about the amount being proposed? Then it looks like we might be able to move on to Article 9. Article 9, shall the voters of the town of Putney establish a reserve fund named Fire and Emergency Medical Services, EMS, Capital Reserve Fund, to be used for the purchase or lease of emergency vehicles and equipment, construction and/or improvements of the station building, and authorize the transfer of $5,000 from the fiscal year 2025 unrestricted year-end fund balance to fund the Fire and EMS Reserve Fund. Fletcher, do you wish to speak to this one?
Yeah, this is also something that has been sort of a glaring lack in our fiscal management. In fact, Peter Shumlin pointed it out when he was the chair of the Selectboard 40 years ago. So we're kind of playing catch up all on that. To be responsible. I mean, we're sneaking up on having to replace a fire engine. And the price of that is sneaking up on $1 million. And we don't have a reserve fund, so we better start somewhere. 5,000 doesn't look like a lot in the face of that, but we got to start somewhere. And admittedly, much lesser items of capital assets could need to be replaced as you go along. So we need to have a fund that we can look to for that money. So this is long overdue.
Any questions about this? Article 9, $5,000 Fire and EMS Reserve Fund.
I don't understand why these expenses wouldn't come out of the reserve fund that we were just talking about.
So, does anybody want to answer Dawn's question of why is this separate from the catastrophe reserve fund?
This is an ongoing capital, as Karen said, capital asset management. This is just a rolling process. These are things that need to be replaced, but not every year. So we need a reserve fund, as she said, to smooth out the bumps in the budget, because we don't want to have to whack the reserve fund, with the general budget with tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars expenditure in one year if we can build up some reserves and be ready for that expense. And part of that is the planning that Karen's doing about capital asset management.
Any other questions? And if you don't mind, like, we're getting into town meeting habits, you raise your hand, then I'll call on you. That way we'll have more order. Any other questions about this $5,000? No, then let's keep going. The next article is Article 10. Shall the voters of the town of Putney authorize the transfer of $25,145 from the fiscal year 2024 library unrestricted fund balance to the library reserve fund for capital improvements. Peg is the select board, but there's also members of the library trustees. Do you want to speak to this? Janice?
No, I don't think so. At this point, I'm not exactly sure. My understanding, I'm not the treasurer or finance person, my understanding is that the money that we have on reserve now is for capital improvements when we need it, and I think it's Karen that started that fund.
Karen, do you want to speak to this?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm going to be meeting with the library trustees on Tuesday night, actually.
That's why you want to say anything.
Yeah, so again, another fund balance, and as folks know that the library gets an appropriation every year, and it's built into the general fund budget. And then they also have a small amount, $25,000, in an unrestricted fund, and they are looking at some capital improvements for the library building in the next year. So heat pumps with air and heat, the roof, we're gonna be looking at that. We do have a roof reserve fund with about $100,000 in there that can support, when they're ready to put that out. And then some carpet, but this is a way, to have money put aside in case they need to use it. And Emily Zervis, who's the library director, has been very good and proactive about going after grants. And I know she's waiting on a large one that could support the heat pumps.
And the carpet.
Yeah.
But it's from the State Library Association of Vermont, but who knows right now where those funds are coming from. The State Library Association hasn't had any information to give her.
So that's the reason to move that over. In the library, by the way, I just found out, 2001, there was a special meeting about the library becoming a public library. A library reserve account was set up back in 2001, so it does exist. I'll get you the information, Fletcher.
Any other questions about Article 10, Library Reserve Fund? Looks like we can move on to Article 11. Shall the voters of the town of Putney authorize payment of real property taxes for the ensuing year in 4 installments, with the due dates being the 3rd Friday in the month of August, November, February, and May, by physical delivery to town hall, delivery to town hall postmarked, or by online payment on or before that date. Peg, did you have anything you want to add to that?
That one's pretty self-explanatory.
Self-explanatory.
Shall we pay taxes 4 times a year instead of?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add that until every other year before this, we pay taxes 3 times a year. And this article has come up 2 years in a row with the 3-year installments, with us kind of gently encouraging people to make an amendment to make it 4. So this is just explicitly saying, do you want 4 instead of 3? Which can be amended back down to 3 at town meeting if you'd like.
Yeah. Ruby.
Ruby McAdie. Can someone explain to me what the benefit is one way or the other? I don't actually have an opinion on it, but I don't understand why we care.
Karen, want to answer that?
I will. After the reappraisal, we heard from a lot of people, and there are still people that are struggling financially and wondering how they're going to pay their property taxes. So adding an extra payment will hopefully spread that out a little better and support those people.
And,
Yeah, Peg.
and on the flip side, it means the town hall has to do the process
One
4
extra
times a
time.
year instead of 3.
Kim's really good at it,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, Brian.
With that concern on the four installments, the articles, when they're created, again, this is kind of off topic, but is there a way to consider maybe not having these payments due during the winter months? Fuel oil is fairly expensive in the winter months, and as a property tax payer, sometimes I struggle on putting the money aside for fuel or for taxes when I need to heat my home. So the month and the timing on said payment probably would, in my opinion, would be easier in a summer month or a non-heating oil month than the winter time. So is there a way to possibly get something like that to be considered?
Well, Brian, I'm going to do just a parliamentary move, which is you could amend this article, and then we need to get a second, and then we would vote on that amendment. So that is definitely, everybody should know that. Janice was asking about the numbers in the reserve fund. These things can be amended, and that's a way that the town makes that decision for itself.
There's also, there's nothing that prevents you from paying ahead. These are deadlines, but you can, if summer is easier to pay up some, put more money toward your taxes. Town will be happy to get the money early. But this is to help people even out the expense, but these dates are deadlines. They're not, you don't have to wait till that date to pay it. You can pay it whenever you got the money.
Any other questions about the 4 times a year tax payment? All right, it looks like we can move ahead to Article 12. Shall the town of Putney raise and appropriate the sum of $7,851 for the support of Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies, SEVIDS, to provide workforce and economic coordination services to the Wyndham region? When we get to this in town meeting, there will be a representative for this particular article from SEVIDS to answer your questions. We don't have someone here today to answer your questions, but this is your time to ask whatever questions you want about this particular article.
I could also comment, because I was the one who really advocated for breaking this out into a separate article. It had up until now been part of the agency and intergovernmental transfer section of the budget, which made no sense to me because SEVEDS is not an agency, it's a private nonprofit corporation. So, and that 7851 is based on their ask of $3 a head for every man, woman, and child in Putney. So hopefully with it broken out as a separate article, they can explain why that's a good number, why Putney should be paying at that rate. Not all the towns do.
Peg, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I just wanted to make it clear that this had been in the budget, and it's just showing up in a different place than it had been previously.
And it was a separate article last year as well?
No, it has been in the past, and then we added it to, as a line item to the budget.
Well, it's always been in as a line item in the budget, but that was part of the problem, was it was buried in the agency and governmental transfer section of the budget. And so it didn't stand out on its own, as opposed to, well, you know, we put a lot of discussion and thought into social service agencies and other nonprofits that we contribute funding to. But because of the way it was put into the budget, SEVEDS never really got that kind of discussion.
Any other questions? Because otherwise I'll go to Karen. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's Lynn. You're backlit. I can't even see it.
Could somebody just explain briefly what this is, what the organization does?
I can, but.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. You're the chair.
Thank you. So I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it as well as one of their representatives.
Right.
But they are they provide services for municipal governments as well as economic development support throughout this part of the state. They put on some very helpful training, some of which I've attended, in order to grow nonprofit and municipal boards. They've been integral in the Bellows Falls area for economic development. So basically, they're an organization that works heavily with this region for economic development. Is mostly their bailiwick. Karen?
And if you want to see where they are in the existing budget, it's on page 35 of your town report. There's a section called Other that about a third of the way down the page has got the SEVED's line item in it.
And is there a report in here from Sevens from
Yeah.
last year? I think
They should be.
You should be able to find that in your town report as well.
And I just want to reiterate, they have come before us. They've not always been in the budget. They've been in the budget for the past, 2 years? 2 or 3 years? Karen?
2016. So
I don't think so, because they've come to town meeting before.
Sevens?
Yes.
Yeah, they come every year.
Yeah, but we voted on them before. It's been a warrant article before.
Yeah, like 2016, they petitioned 3 years in a row.
Right.
And then
And they ended up in the budget. That was an old policy that we had. So there was a reason why we put it in to the budget.
Bruce had his hand up?
Oh, I just wanted to comment that it's a part of Brattleboro Development Corporation.
Right, that's true too, yeah.
Yeah, so if people wanted to look them up, you can find out more about their work.
Yeah.
As well as whatever they put in the town report.
So,
I'm not supposed to be doing that, that's.
Yes, Janice.
So, yeah, thanks for mentioning that. So the man that comes to speak from BGCC, he's actually speaking about SEVEDs as well? Or is that
No,
a separate?
I believe there's a representative who's going to be at our town meeting
Yes.
from Sevens who will be able to answer your questions. Any other questions about this article? Otherwise, we're going to move on to the next one, Article 13. Shall the town of Putney vote to raise, appropriate, and expend the sum of $757 for the support of Groundworks Collaborative to provide services to residents of the town? I know Nate was going to say something about this in town meeting. Is there other members of the select board who want to say anything about this?
This was, we have what used to be our social services policy and now is the community, what is it called now? Community Services Appropriation Policy?
Community Service Agencies.
Thank you. And Selectboard was recognizing that there was some things that needed to be fixed in that policy. And one of the things that we did was narrow it down from 3 groups to just 2.
3 categories of.
3 of funding, and why they would receive that funding. And I think it was last year, that when we finally got down to who should be in Group B, because Group A is Putney-based organizations only. Group B was wider organizations that provide significant services to Putney. And then there was Group C, which was other. Groundworks fell under other. And so when we voted to just eliminate all of Group C, Groundworks was one of those. So they came back to us this year they petitioned us with this number, and I believe this number is what they would have received if they were in Group C, not in Group B. And so this wasn't a petitioned article from them, but that's where it stemmed from.
And there should be somebody, we're hoping at town meeting, to be able to speak to Groundworks and represent Groundworks. Is there any questions about this article? Bruce?
Not about the article, but I'm realizing I'm not understanding some of the charts. There's a budget FY '25, a budget FY '26.
And which document are you looking at, Bruce?
Right now, it's in both, but right now I'm looking at page 22 of the supplement. It could be any other page, but because I was looking at the SEVET budget, I see the 7,851 in budget 25, and then it's 0 in budget FY '26. Is 26, like, we're looking at fiscal year '25 right now.
Right, and the reason you're seeing it zeroed out in the budget is because it's now moved into its own article. Same number, but just separately discussed and not buried in the general budget.
Thank you.
Any other questions about this particular article on groundworks? Looks like we can move to the next article, which is Article 14. Shall the voters of the town of Putney authorize taxation of alternative energy sources on land sited in Putney regulated by the Public Utility Commission? This article will rescind Article 7 approved at town meeting on March 4th, 2014, which Article 7 read as follows. To see if the town will vote to exempt from property tax assessment alternative energy sources allowed under 32 VSA Section 3845. Eileen, do you want to explain anything about this article?
Sure. So this, as with the other article about tax payments being spread out, arose from a discussion that the Selectboard have had, recognizing the need that we need to seek more revenue for the town budget to reduce the tax burden on the taxpayers. And this article actually did come up 2 or 3 years ago. And we're just raising it again. The town has fully exempted all solar arrays specifically. Just for your information, the solar taxable value of that money that we're not receiving right now, the assessed value is $1,664,000, which would yield $11,794 on the municipal tax rate if it was taxable. So it's just an attempt to say back to you, the voters, do you want to keep this exempt? There are good reasons to do that. Or do you want to expand the tax base?
And a lot, if you remember from last year's town meeting, a lot of the discussion focused on the fact that as it currently stands, it doesn't differentiate between a business that's making a profit off of that electricity and a nonprofit that might be benefiting the community. They're all exempt. And we spent a lot of time chasing that issue around the room, but didn't come to a definitive conclusion. So we're going to have another run at it.
Jordy?
And people should know that by state law, the first 50 kilowatts of any solar array are automatically tax exempt. So the typical homeowner has way less than 50. So if you have solar panels, you're not likely to be taxed.
Right, it's not going to affect homeowners.
Just for reference, if you've seen the solar panels at Green Mountain Orchards, that's 57 kilowatts. So it's a little bit over the cutoff, the state mandated exemption.
Billy had a hand up.
I was just curious if there was a sense of what percentage of that infrastructure is actually business owned versus private or nonprofit owned, but I'm guessing based on the 50 kilowatt cutoff that it's probably mostly businesses or maybe institutional. Like
There's one on here that is the problematic one, and that's the Vermont Community Solar, right? Which is a consortium of homeowners that bought into a community solar array. There is no way, if we try, this is what we were chasing, we were trying to break that one out, but under state statute, there's no way for us to do that. So that one would get caught in the other ones. The other ones are all for profit, and they're building more infrastructure as we speak. So it's a good place to capture revenue.
Bruce, you had your hand up?
Jordy answered my question. Thank you.
Any other questions about this? This is taking property that was under tax exempt and making it taxable. Looks like we can move along. So we are now at Article 15. Shall the voters authorize the select board to levy a 1% tax on meals and alcoholic beverages pursuant to 24 VSA Section 138B, starting July 1st, 2025, for the purpose of supporting the General Fund Capital Reserve Fund. Anybody want to speak to this?
I do.
Eileen?
Is there a handout there that,
Oh, yes.
that one there?
Yeah.
I did not put one out for myself.
Okay.
Does everybody have this?
Let
It's
me-
the how to adopt a local option tax in your community.
I have one extra over here. Is everybody else looking for one? Mine is a little wet. Go ahead, mix it in. Looks like people have them. Do you want to walk us through this handout?
Yeah,
Eileen?
so this is going to pertain to Article 14, 15, and 16. They all are levying what's called a local options tax. The state allows us to do that on top of the sales tax that the state collects. And last year, we brought this before you in one big lump sum, let's tax everybody. This year, we have broken it out to 3 articles, and again, this is in response to people's real concerns about the property tax payments that we're all struggling to pay, us up here included. And so this is another attempt to broaden the tax base. So the first one is on meals and alcoholic beverages. First of all, the way that this works is we pass it at town meeting, and then we have to give the department at least 90 days notice before the quarter start date of a newly effective local option tax, which we have set at July 1st of this year. And then the administration of the local options tax is the department verifies the review process, and that that the business, it's like a one-time adjustment fee for businesses to adjust their the amount that they collect. The businesses pay that amount along with their sales tax, the state sales tax to the state, and then the state takes 30% off of that and gives us the remaining 70%. So with that said, as far as meals and alcoholic beverages specifically, there are some spreadsheets, data for certain, for sales and meals and rooms. Rooms and meals and alcohol sales was unfortunately not, they only collect data for towns that have more than 10 counts. So I wasn't able to get current data, but the last one, which I think was in 2021, would have been for meals and alcohol was, so I should have brought my glasses, 183,1258.86, which would translate into revenue for the town of Putney of $12,818.81. And again, that was a few years ago, so it could be higher now. And so that's where that's at. this document right here is very helpful.
Any questions about Article 15? And for this one, we're just discussing the 1% tax on meals and alcoholic beverages. Should we move to the next one that has to do with rooms? Article 16, shall the voters authorize the select board to levy a 1% tax on rooms pursuant to 24 VSA Section 138B starting July 1st, 2025 for the purpose of supporting the general fund capital reserve fund? Yeah, Bruce.
Could the select board just comment, maybe hopefully on, their thinking around putting it towards the capital reserve funds versus the operating funds? I have some thinking about it.
Yeah, so we could just put this into the general fund. We chose the capital reserve fund so that we don't have to put more money into that. So every year we put in, how much money do we put into the capital reserve fund, Karen?
Right now, we're only putting 30,000.
So every year.
Every year.
So, and that fund is used for capital, so like town hall renovations, major projects. So the less money that we have to raise through taxation to put into that fund is, less money that we have to raise. We could put it into any fund. We could put it into the sidewalk reserve fund. We could put it into the general fund, but we chose that one.
So right now, we're putting 30,000 into capital reserves, and this would add another 12, kind of spread.
Right.
Spread between those three different articles.
No, that was just.
No, that was just an example of the amount that I could find from 2021. It's a totally.
We don't know yet.
We have no idea, but it's not, it's, and also I've been told that sales taxes are volatile. So one year could be way up, one year could be way low, depending, on how many tourists we attract and how the foliage is and whether there's a solar eclipse. So it's not a steady number, but it's, it's revenue. So, and for reference, a cent on the tax rate right now equates to, 37,673. So every time we raise more than that, we can reduce our tax rate by a cent.
Yeah,
Karen?
2 hands in the
Oh,
back.
you're giving me a
Is that a thumbs up, Karen, in the back? Okay, great. Lynn?
Lynn Weinstein, I was just curious, when we say rooms, is that Airbnb?
Yes, it would include Airbnbs, yeah.
And with the meals, does that include like deli counter stuff at the co-op and?
I think, yes, I think that, so there's a weird, I don't know if you've ever, has anybody gone to the Brattleboro co-op and then ordered six pieces of cake? There's a if you buy one piece of cake, then there's a sales tax on it. If you buy 6, they consider it bulk. So yes, as long as you're not buying whatever the threshold is that makes it considered bulk.
I'm just thinking about dining here, we have not that many dining options. It's
Yep,
basically-
anything that is over the counter, like a sandwich at the co-op or a sandwich at the general store or the Putney Diner, those would be considered. They all collect sales tax on their meals.
Unless you buy 6.
Unless you buy 6 pieces of cake. I don't know about anything else.
And I have to remember these things.
Should we move on to the third in the 3, which is Article 17? Shall the voters authorize the select board to levy a 1% tax on sales pursuant to 24 VSA Section 138B starting July 1st, 2025 for the purpose of supporting the general fund capital reserve fund? Any other questions about this overall, these 3 articles?
I just want to point out that I do have better sales numbers on sales. And in Vermont, there are a fair number of things, unless you're buying it over the counter, less than 6, that are like food, that are exempt from sales tax, and that applies to the local options tax as well. So, so in fiscal year, which ended in June 30th of 2024, Putney reported 4,119,683 of sales of taxable income. So that's not your milk and your eggs and all that other stuff that is essential for life, which is 70%, because that's the amount that we get of the 1% of the whole sales tax. Would bring in $28,837.78 tax revenue. So if you added that to the amount that I gave before, we're at least a cent down on the tax rate.
Yes, Steve.
Steve, give me what are sales? I mean,
What are sales?
like, give me some examples where people are spending $4 million in Putney on sales. Is that other than food?
Putney Co-op, vitamins,
Vitamins.
I don't know. I'm just saying anything that's not
Yeah,
taxable.
there's a whole set of stuff that's.
I mean, there's food, but like, there's, I don't even know, I mean, I think there might
But what
be,
about syrup producers? Like,
that probably
people
counts,
selling
does that count as a
gallons of
food?
Well, I don't know.
That's a
what I'm
good question, so
wondering.
that's a good question, I'll find out.
Ruby, did you have your hand up?
I guess so the last time we discussed this in town meeting, I remember individuals who, say they make jewelry and they sell jewelry online or also in a store.
Yep.
I remember this having a significant impact on their
decision.
Yeah, and I am not one of those people. I don't sell jewelry or anything, but I'm hoping that either someone in this room now or at town meeting, we have some examples or people who have lived experience that can help us to make this decision. I think that I really appreciate that you've broken them out, the three, because they have very different kind of weight. Like I'm finding myself kind of grappling with them differently for the different items.
Well, he'll probably kill me for saying it, but if you recall last year at town meeting, Richard Bissell spoke about it quite a bit, because it's a system that he has a great deal of experience with and how it gets collected. But that's an example, furniture, that's an example of a good that is taxable. How that would impact individual businesses, a jewelry maker versus a furniture maker, I don't know.
So as far as online sales are concerned, there's a bit of a blurb in here as an effect on businesses and individuals. It says the local option tax is a destination-based tax, meaning it's based on the location where the purchaser takes possession. So businesses must charge the lot on taxable purchases completed within the municipality where a lot is in effect, or when a taxable item is delivered to a customer within a municipality with a lot in effect. So it's products that are sold to people who are living in Putney. Or they go and they take possession of the jewelry from out of state as they're going up north. If you buy something online from Amazon, you'll notice that there is a sales tax attached to it. And that sales tax would go up by 1% when you purchase something from Amazon if your address is in Putney.
Other questions? Yes.
Just for
Jordy.
reference, if you've shopped at Brown and Roberts the last year or so, you've paid the 1% extra tax.
That's another good point, yeah. Brattleboro already has a 1% sales option tax. They have had for quite some time. The two towns above us do not, Bellows Falls and Westminster. Bellows Falls would be the next, I think, logical place for people to go to shop to escape the 1% tax. I don't know if it's worth it to them. I assume if they're going to go all the way to Bellows Falls, they'd skip over to New Hampshire and not pay anything. So, so as far as the local business effects on local businesses, my opinion is it wouldn't really be that much of a burden because they already are collecting 6% already. So that's just my 2 cents, but That's why we bring it to the voters to decide.
Any other questions about the 1% tax articles? Well, it looks like we reached the last one, which is Article 18. Shall the voters of the town of Putney designate the 50 acres on Route 5 donated to the town by Nathaniel Hendricks on December 31st, 2014, parcel 080237, as a conservation site open to the public and managed by the Putney Conservation Commission for the primary purposes of protecting an important part of the town's priority East Putney forest block and wildlife corridor, and maintaining the land's capacity to sequester carbon and recharge aquifers. Is there anyone from the Conservation Commission here who wants to speak to this article? I think that's who.
Yeah, it's a better article for the Conservation Commission to explain. I was hoping somebody would be here, but I guess not. It's not donate either, it's designate. Because we already own it. It's unclear from the deed and historic votes from the town whether the town wants to keep that land as conservation land or some other purpose. And so the Conservation Commission is of the opinion that it should be conserved. And so they wanted to bring this article before the voters to see what the town thinks about that.
Is there anybody who wants to speak about this article? Looks like we don't have anybody from the Conservation Commission, but Bruce?
I'm in a butter, so a little bit biased. I support, it moving into a conservation land. I'm also in the business of nonprofit housing, and it's not appropriate for housing or commercial use. So these uses noted, I think, are the highest and best uses for this land. And I walked it quite a bit, and I toured it with the Conservation Commission as well.
Steve?
Yeah, when something is conserved like this, is this in perpetuity then? I mean, can that be changed? Like, if we discover at some point down the line that, wow, this would be the ideal location for
That would be a question, right? That would be a question on exactly how we would manage to conserve it. So you can do all sorts of different conservation. You could do a conservation easement and put in specific uses like solar if you want. You could put deed restrictions in it. And that would be up to the voters.
Well, the deed is the deed, whatever that deed says, which I don't think has any restrictions. The town could do a declaration, record that, but the bottom line is something David Dean said to me a long time ago: what the town meeting giveth, the town meeting can taketh away.
Yeah. Logan?
Kind of similar to that question, I was just wondering, like, what we're backing ourselves into by conserving it. I'm not saying either way, the question of like, what does that mean and what can we or can we not do? I don't know if anyone here knows, but.
Yeah, that's again a question of, what do we want to do with it? Do we not want to do, if we don't want to conserve it at all, then it remains open for a future select board or a future town meeting to do what they please with it. If we do conserve it, theoretically, we're tying our hands to some degree. But like Fletcher said, with the possible exception of a conservation easement, which means that you have taken away the rights of the municipality or whoever holds the deed and have given it to somebody else to hold in perpetuity, town meeting and the next select board can rescind those.
I notice it says conservation site. Is that a formal designation?
That's a good question for the Conservation Commission.
Yes, we don't know what conservation site means. Is it statutory? Is it anything like that? No?
I don't know.
And Eileen's correct. I mean, in order, you'd have to deed the easement to some third party that would become the enforcer of the easement in order to really tie the town's hands on it. And that's what Vermont Land Trust does. You give them a conservation easement and they police it. They literally come around and check the property every year.
Janice and then Ken.
So I have a really basic question for those that might not be sure. Where exactly on Route 5 is this property?
Oh,
Up next to Bruce.
Just north of Small Meadows Lane.
next to the large tree, next to the, no.
You pass the big red house, and it's right there. It actually abuts
Just a pat, yeah.
of the red house.
Old Town Farm Road.
And it extends up the hill. It's a big parcel. And as it mentions, the East Putney Forest Block, it's a huge block of forested land all the way back down to River Road
Yeah.
and the interstate and the railroad and the river. And it's an important wildlife corridor. We've seen everything from moose to bear and everything. And then they cross over right there to get to the Putney School Forest.
So, yeah, so the Bear Hill Conservation Site, which is an actual conservation site, through, I think, Act 250. There's black gum there, which is also owned by the town. There's the Bear Hill site, and then shortly after that is the Forest for Learning parcel, which is also pursuing a conservation easement. So those pieces of land are already conserved. So that's why this piece becomes important in that corridor.
Ken, you had your hand up.
I was gonna ask the same question as Jen.
Yeah, where is it? Are there any other questions about this final article, Article 18? Do you have any other questions about town meeting, or Karen wants to?
So I want to go on record because I misinformed on Article 6, Eric, so take this down. So Brian, the truck that we're trading is actually a 2013, not 18. It's a 2013 GMC 3500.
So it's more than 10 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's 12. So we're gonna need that detail for town meeting.
Wait a minute. The 2013,
That's the one we're trading.
that's the pickup. That's not
our
a big
current.
truck. You're not gonna buy a pickup for 200,000.
That's what I just got from Lenny.
No, I'm pretty sure it's gotta be a Western Star. And is it a 10-wheeler or a 6-wheeler? That's an
All right.
expensive
Clearly,
pickup.
we need this detail
Brian,
for,
I'm gonna get that information, but obviously.
all right, we'll have it for town meeting.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this.
That's why we're doing this.
Right.
yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate, the town appreciates, I'm sure the select board appreciates hearing these questions. Yeah, Lynn, ahead.
I just want to remind people that
Oh, can we have quiet in the back, please? Yeah.
meet the candidates next Thursday, the 27th, here at 6 o'clock.
6 p.m. and we have
So,
Logan Sears
I put them in alphabetical.
They're both here.
They're both here.
and Beth Slattery.
You can meet them today.
And we have half an hour, so.
Yeah.
So it's important for people to come and vote for their candidate.
Yeah, great.
And we have Eric McGowan running for a seat too.
Any other announcements while we're assembled? I think that concludes the 2025 town meeting information meeting. Thank you, everybody.
See you all at town meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel so much like I'm ready to go now. Yeah, bye.